Welcome back. So, today we're doing something a little bit different. I know most of you are used to seeing me do things with Enlisted. Sometimes I branch out to other things like DCS or whatever, right? But I've actually spent a lot of time in War Thunder. Um, Probably like 4,000 hours, give or take. I don't know the exact number, but I've spent a lot of time in War Thunder. And recently they had a new patch, and that new patch brought out a pretty interesting vehicle, the F-117. It's a vehicle that it's kind of legendary. It's a nifty little stealth plane. You may have heard of it. It did some pretty neat things in the Gulf War. But the reason why I wanted to make this video is I would really like to see air battles in War Thunder get a complete overhaul. And I know people have been asking for it and people have been talking about it for a very, very long time. And it's never happened. And to be fair, ground battles have seen very little iteration over the years. If anything, simulator battles have probably changed the most mechanically. But I think that air battles have hit a point, at least for me, where the inability to innovate or improve or at least bring back what, in my opinion, used to make them fun, I guess. I was going to say incredible, but I don't know if they were ever incredible. It might have just been that there was nothing else like it. But they've lost something. And in part, I think it's due to inaction on Gaijin's side. Like, there probably isn't the financial incentive to go and update the game type, which is, for me, it's a shame because I used to really like AirRB, but you know, I should caveat that, right? Like, if I go back far enough, AirRB hasn't actually fundamentally changed that much. It's just that the addition of systems has always been a detriment to AirRB in a way that that isn't particularly like conducive to engaging gameplay, in my opinion. And what I mean by that is, like, right now there's an issue with AirRB where, and I know that they have an opt-in system where you can opt into playing smaller matches, but in my experience, you barely get that. But it has an issue right now where you have so many planes with so much capability in a relatively small area. Like, I know they've expanded the maps, but it's still a relatively small area with an incredible amount of firepower and an incredible number of missiles on board. Ideally, I mean, if I was just to make one change, I would cut the matches down to being like 8v8 or 6v6. But I feel like that's just a small band-aid change. I don't think that actually fixes the problem. And for a long time, I explained the problem as basically War Thunder has been dominated by what I call the fighter mafia. And because it's been dominated by the fighter mafia, effectively what it means is there's only a team deathmatch in the sky, airquake, if you will. And there's no room for anything else, because anything else, and you'll get a very vocal chunk of the player base screaming that that doesn't need to be here and we're here to fight and herder to the point where I keep seeing people posting about them trying to fly like the F-117 in Air RB, and they're just getting shot down by their teammates because the teammates don't want half their team to be F-117s because F-117s are kind of useless. And the thing is, they're both right. Like, the F-117 players are not wrong in wanting to play their airplane in Air RB. At the same time, their counterparts that say that it's useless, they're entirely correct. It's completely useless in AirRB. But that's because AirRB as a game mode hasn't evolved and is in a terrible state right now. So when I say that I think AirRB used to be more fun, more interesting, more engaging, if you go back to like 2016, I'm not saying that AirRB was perfect then, because even back then, if you went to top tier and you played MiG-15s and F-86s, it was airquake. You took off, you scraped the deck, people flew to the middle of the map, and all they did was fight. So, like I said, this is not a new problem for AirRB. Like, the higher you go in AirRB for its entire existence, the more sterile, boring, and in some cases, it depends on what the meta is that given month or that given year. Sometimes it's really degenerate. It depends. There are times where it hasn't been. There are times where it is. It really just depends. But what we did have back then, especially in the lower BRs, were much more interesting, nuanced, asymmetrical battles. So, for example, you could get a battle where the Americans don't have any airfields, so they start in the air, but they have carriers, so their naval planes can land on the carriers to rearm, their army planes can't, but there would be AI ground forces that would take a base partway through the battle, and then that would allow them to land and rearm. I think it was Norway, maybe? I can't remember the name of the map. I think it was Norway. That there were a bunch of American landing craft where if you were a German player, you had a rear airbase and a forward airbase. If you were an American player, you had no airbase and you had some carriers. If their landing ships made it to the forward airbase, it would switch sides. So there was an incentive then for the American players to protect their landing craft. There was an incentive for the German players to destroy the landing craft, and there was an incentive for the American players to get air superiority over that area so that they could land and rearm. And at the same time, there was an incentive for the German player to do the same thing, because then they wouldn't have to fly as far to go back and rearm, right? And I think that made for more interesting gameplay. Likewise, if you look at some of the Japanese maps where they had carriers, as an American player, you could go in with like a BTD. One of my friends and my favorite things to do would be to go in with like a BTD, hit it, and take out their carriers. So now they wouldn't have anywhere to go and land, since a lot of the Japanese planes that we'd run into would be carrier capable and whatnot. But it was worth a bunch of points. It was something cool that you could do. And, like, we have these more modern carriers that they've gone and that they've put in the game, but you don't really play with them anymore. They're not really a thing these days. And even when they were a thing, they were nigh impossible to actually sink. Like, even if you could get to them, and to be fair, getting to them was its own chore, but assuming that you could, in fact, get to them, you had to also be able to sink them, and you could put like thousands of pounds of bombs into them and it wouldn't do shit. But these days, when it comes to AirRB, it feels very sterile, very figured out, very methodical. Like, every time you spawn in, there's like 4 bases for you to go and bomb. They're usually in just about the same place every single time on every single map. On almost every single map, there's a front line. On those front lines, there's basically the same enemies that are on every front line. And if you decide that you're going to go and, I don't know, play an A10 and actually do A10 things, well, going and shooting at those AI basically does nothing for you because, well, either people abused it and Gaijin felt the need to remove the XP economy from it, or, you know, people bitched that they were getting too many attackers on their team and they needed more fighters and people to actually fight the other planes. And whether it's been people in fighters complaining about bombers and attackers, or it's been Gaijin nerfing the XP gains from alternative, you know, play styles, or anything else, the end result has been that AirRB has become sterile, it's become boring, it's become the same, and every single match, and it doesn't matter if you go out there at like 7-7 or you go out there at 13 or whatever, right? Anywhere in between. Anything outside of World War II planes, and to some extent these days, even if you go back and play the World War II planes, the game has just become spawn, fly to the middle of the map, fight, die, go next. And there was a long time where it felt like, at least to me, and maybe I'm wrong, but there was a long time where, to me, it felt like the difference between AirRB and Air AB was that in Air AB you got instant action where you could be thrown in. Like, yes, you had more artificial flight models, and you know, you had rearming weapons, and you know, just things that were more on the BS side of things, right? Just things that enabled fun but weren't necessarily realistic. Whereas Air RB as an alternative seemed like it was much more intentional. Like, you had to be much more strategic, you had to think about where you were going to go, and part of this was the size of the maps versus the speed and capability of the planes, because when your plane only goes like 350 kilometers an hour, when you're deciding where to go on the map, it's a very impactful, decisive decision, because if you side climb left and the other team all goes way far right, well, you're going to be out of the fight for 10-15 minutes while you try to get over there, because your plane's just not that fast. I mean, maybe I'm overestimating the amount of time, but the point is, it's not like these days where if you decide to go left and they go right, it doesn't really make a difference because you just flip the afterburner on and you fly to the right. Because even though they put out bigger maps, they're not big enough to make a difference when you have a missile that can go 50 kilometers and you have a plane that can fly at like Mach 2 or Mach 2.5. So what I would like to see is a shift in AirRB to enable playstyles that are not just take off and fight each other. I would like to see XP rewards for doing different things than just shooting down enemy planes. I would like to see more AI targets on the map, and AI targets that are actually designed for the type of systems and the type of aircraft that are being added to the game. So something like the F-117 should have precision targets that are surrounded by enemy like air defense, right? Things that would be very, very difficult for an F-15 to go and hit, but the stealth aspect of an F-117, or the long-range strike capabilities of like an SU. Well, I guess an F-15 could probably do it too if they just overwhelmed it with like glide bombs or whatever. But my point here is that I would like to see precision targets where you would gain points based off of how precise you are in taking out that target with a precision guided munition. Like, take out this specific car or this specific house, you know, things like that, right? Things that reward bringing laser guided bombs or JDAMs and hitting a particular target. You can still have bases to go and hit with your strategic planes. And you can even put in XP incentives so that strike planes get more XP for going after strike targets, and bombers get more XP for going after bombing targets. So your bomb trucks can go after the rail yards, and your strike planes can go and hit, like Habibi over here, the bomb maker, sitting in the back of his Hilux, and not hit Tommy, who's sitting there like 20 feet to the right, minding his own business. Likewise, you can have CAS engagements, that are designed for your CAS planes to come in and hit, and maybe they get a bonus on those. And then if you shrink down your match size and you make it so that there are respawns like there are in ground RB. So like, let's say you bring it down to being like 6v6 or 8v8. So think of it like you've got two squadrons of 4 that are going to go out and try to accomplish something on the map against another 2 squadrons of 4, right? And I don't mean like pre-mates. I just mean, that's kind of how I envision it, right? Like, people are going to split up into their various roles with whatever it is that they're trying to accomplish in that match, right? And so your win condition moves from, can I just kill the other team, to, can my team accomplish the objectives on the map better than the other team? So you can have your match that, I don't know, lasts for 35, 45, whatever, however many minutes an average War Thunder match lasts for. And you can have objectives on the map, which are the actual goal of the match, that give you points as a team. And sure, yes, killing the other players is really important. You get points for killing the other players just like you would doing anything else. But I wouldn't value it more than killing anything else, because the value in shooting down enemy planes is enabling your bombers and your strikers to accomplish their mission. So, like, let's say you clear a front line as an A10, like you wipe out the enemy front line. Let's say you get 1,000 points. Then let's say that enemy planes roll in, right? Each one of them that you shoot down is like 500 points. So if there's enough enemy planes and you kill enough of them, maybe it'll be more lucrative, but at the same time, a fully loaded A10 can roll in and they can clear a front line very, very easily. So they can go and clear one front line, get 1,000 points, start clearing the next front line. And I'm just spitballing numbers out there. I feel like this is something that would require play testing, and it would require different iterations, right? Like, this isn't something that I think you can just throw a number out and have it be the correct number. I'm just spitballing numbers to use as an example. It's not going to be perfect. It's not like I've sat here and mathed out the perfect equation for the perfect numbers to accomplish this. But my point is, I would like to see the game move from being this sterile team deathmatch nonsense to actually being an objective-driven game that allows you to use any type of aircraft in the game, because the game has many types of aircraft, and have them all be successful, have them all have their own role, and have them all add something important to the team. And I think that's something that's well within Gaijin's capability to do. I just don't think that until now they've had any incentive to do it. And to be fair, I still don't think they have an incentive to do it. Like, realistically, a lot of people are very happy to just log in and shut their brain off and throw themselves at the enemy, fire their missiles until they're out of missiles, and die. Like, people are more than content to do that. So I realize that what I want probably isn't going to happen, but I would really like it to happen, because I think War Thunder potentially could be one of the greatest air games to ever exist. It is by far the best encyclopedia of military vehicles out there. Like, DCS may have an amazing cockpit simulation, but War Thunder does a great job with missiles, and they have more vehicles from more different eras than any other game out there. And that is amazing. The problem is, like, half of the vehicles in the game end up being useless because either they're not the right type of vehicle, or they are the right type of vehicle and they're just not meta. Um, I just would like to see that change. I think that there's so much potential here for such a cool game, for the kind of game that makes me like sit down in front of my computer every day and be like, oh boy, I can't wait to get on there, because yesterday I flew the A-10 and I got to put accurate fire on targets with troops in contact, and it was so freaking cool. And then today maybe I want to have this like cold, detached stealth bomber playstyle where I'm just lurking in orbit at at midnight on a moonless night, dropping JDAMs on bunkers. Oh, dude, like there's like peak military fantasy potential in this game, and it's just not there right now. Like, it's so close. It has so much potential. It could be so cool. Like, every time a new update comes out, we get these awesome videos that show like all of the cool aspects of what you could do with these planes, right? But you just don't. You just don't get to do that in game. And it's so close. It could be so cool. So, let me know what you think down below. Hopefully I've articulated my point well enough. I might make another video in the future talking about like a game mode that I've envisioned that I think it'd be really easy to design and implement. Um, but we'll see. I'll probably make another video in the future about that. It probably deserves its own because it is a little bit more like complex and in depth. But let me know what you think down below. Are you happy with the way that War Thunder is right now? Do you not think that it needs any changes? You happy to just go out and like shoot at everything that moves and do it again? Personally, I'm not, but hey, maybe I'm in the minority. So, as per usual, get out there, kick ass, take names, and win your games.